On a cold October morning in 1967, two men rode their horses deep into the wilderness of Northern California. Roger Patterson and Bob Gimlin were searching for something that most people believed existed only in campfire stories and childhood nightmares. What they captured on film that day would become the most famous piece of evidence in cryptozoology history, launching decades of scientific debate, inspiring countless expeditions, and turning a regional folklore into a global phenomenon that continues to captivate millions of people around the world. But here's what most people don't know. The story of Bigfoot isn't really about a mysterious creature lurking in the forests. It's about something far more fascinating and complex. It's about human nature itself, our deep connection to the wilderness, our need for mystery in an increasingly mapped and measured world, and how a legend can reveal profound truths about who we are as a species. This is the true story behind North America's most famous monster, a tale that spans centuries of indigenous wisdom, scientific investigation, media manipulation, and genuine human wonder. By the time we reach the end of this journey together, you'll understand why Bigfoot matters far more than whether or not the creature actually exists. The story begins long before Patterson and Gimlin ever set foot in those California woods, in a time when North America was a vastly different place, populated by indigenous peoples who understood the forests in ways that European settlers could barely comprehend. These Native American tribes had names for the creature that would eventually become known as Bigfoot. The Lumi called it Semeco, the Quinault knew it as Seteteco, and the Lakota spoke of Chayatanka, the big elder brother. But these weren't just stories told around fires to frighten children. In many tribal traditions, these beings were considered real, physical creatures that shared the forest with humans, bears, and deer. They were often described as guardians of the wilderness, powerful but generally peaceful, staying hidden from human contact unless disturbed or threatened. The creatures were typically portrayed as massive, hairy, human-like beings that walked upright, possessed incredible strength, and emanated a distinctive, overwhelming.
Dr. Grover Krantz, the late Washington State University anthropologist who spent much of his career studying Bigfoot evidence, often pointed to this widespread indigenous testimony as one of the most compelling aspects of the entire phenomenon. Unlike many cryptozoological claims that emerge suddenly in modern times, the Bigfoot legend has deep historical roots that predate European colonization by thousands of years. The transformation of these indigenous traditions into modern American folklore began with the westward expansion of European settlers in the 1800s. As loggers, miners, and trappers pushed deeper into previously unexplored wilderness areas, they began encountering something that didn't fit into their understanding of North American wildlife. The accounts they brought back to settlements and trading posts described enormous, ape-like creatures that walked on two legs and seemed to possess human-like intelligence. One of the earliest documented European-American encounters occurred in 1811 near what is now Jasper, Alberta. David Thompson, a British-Canadian fur trader and surveyor, discovered a set of massive footprints in the snow. Thompson measured the prints at 14 inches long and 8 inches wide, with 4 toes clearly visible. He wrote in his journal that his indigenous guides were reluctant to follow the tracks, claiming they belonged to a creature they called the mammoth of the mountains. Throughout the remainder of the 19th century, similar accounts trickled out of the American and Canadian wilderness. Miners in California's Sierra Nevada mountains reported seeing enormous, hair-covered figures watching them from ridgelines. Loggers in the Pacific Northwest claimed to find oversized footprints near their camps, and occasionally reported direct encounters with massive bipedal creatures that would flee when discovered. The modern Bigfoot phenomenon, however, truly began in the 1950s with a series of events in Northern California that would forever change how the world viewed these mysterious reports. The key figure in this transformation was a man named Ray Wallace, a logging contractor whose very name would later become synonymous with both Bigfoot evidence and controversy. In August 1958, Ray and his crew were working on a remote logging project in the Six Rivers National Forest near the small town of Bluff Creek, California. The workers had been experiencing strange incidents for several weeks. Equipment mysteriously moved overnight, massive footprints discovered around their work site, and an overwhelming sense of being watched while working in isolated areas of the forest. The situation reached a climax when Jerry Crew, one of Wallace's bulldozer operators, arrived at work one morning to find a series of enormous footprints circling his machine. The prints were clearly defined in the soft earth, measuring approximately 16 inches long and 7 inches wide, showing what appeared to be 5 toes and a distinctly human-like foot structure, but far larger than any known primate species.
Crew made plaster casts of the best prints and brought them to the local newspaper office in nearby Eureka, California. The Humboldt Times ran the story on October 5, 1958, under the headline, "Bigfoot Prints Found Near Bluff Creek." This single newspaper article introduced the name Bigfoot to the American public and launched what would become a cultural phenomenon lasting more than half a century. What made the Bluff Creek incidents particularly compelling was their systematic nature and the credibility of the witnesses involved. These weren't random hikers claiming to have seen something unusual. They were experienced woodsmen and heavy equipment operators who had spent their entire careers working in remote forest locations. Many of them had initially been skeptical of the footprint discoveries, but became convinced that something extraordinary was occurring when they witnessed the evidence firsthand. The publicity generated by the Humboldt Times article attracted the attention of researchers, scientists, and curiosity seekers from across the country. Among those who became fascinated by the Bluff Creek events was Roger Patterson, a former rodeo rider and aspiring filmmaker from Yakima, Washington. Patterson had always been interested in unexplained phenomena and saw in the Bigfoot reports an opportunity to document something truly extraordinary. Patterson spent months researching Bigfoot accounts, interviewing witnesses, and studying the plaster casts that had been made at various sighting locations. He became convinced that a large, undiscovered primate species was living in the remote forests of the Pacific Northwest, and that with enough patience and the right equipment, he could capture definitive proof of its existence. In 1967, Patterson partnered with Bob Gimlin, an experienced outdoorsman and tracker, to mount a systematic search expedition in the Bluff Creek area where the most compelling evidence had been found. They planned to spend several weeks camping in the wilderness, exploring areas where footprints had been discovered, and hoping to encounter one of the creatures directly. On October 20th, 1967, Patterson and Gimlin were riding their horses along a creek bed in a remote section of the forest when their horses suddenly became agitated and reared back in apparent fear. Looking ahead, Patterson saw a large, dark figure moving through the trees, approximately 100 feet away. The creature appeared to be a massive, hair-covered being, walking upright on two legs. Patterson quickly dismounted and grabbed his 16mm camera, managing to film approximately 60 feet of color footage before the creature disappeared into the dense forest. The film appears to show a large, muscular, ape-like being covered in dark hair, walking with a distinctive gait that suggests both human and primate characteristics. The creature briefly turns to look directly at the camera, revealing what appears to be a face with distinctly non-human features.
The Patterson Gimlin film, as it came to be known, immediately became the most famous piece of Bigfoot evidence ever recorded. The footage was clear enough to show remarkable detail, including the creature's musculature, gait, and even what appeared to be female breast development, leading researchers to nickname the filmed creature Patty. Yet the film was also ambiguous enough to allow for multiple interpretations, launching a debate that continues to this day. Scientific analysis of the Patterson Gimlin film has produced wildly different conclusions depending on who conducted the examination. Anthropologists like Grover Krantz argued that the creature's proportions, gait, and apparent muscle structure were consistent with a large, unknown primate species. They pointed to details that would have been difficult to fake in 1967, such as the complex interaction between the creature's hair and underlying anatomy, and the fluid, non-human walking pattern displayed in the footage. Skeptical researchers, however, identified numerous elements that suggested the film showed a person in an elaborate costume. They noted that the creature's proportions, while unusual, were not impossible for a tall human to achieve with padding and stilts. Special effects experts demonstrated that the apparent muscle movement beneath the hair could be created with relatively simple costume techniques available in the 1960s. The controversy surrounding the Patterson Gimlin film was further complicated by questions about the credibility of the filmmakers themselves. Critics pointed out that Patterson had been working on a fictional Bigfoot movie project prior to his encounter and had written a book about Bigfoot sightings. They suggested that the timing of the filming was suspiciously convenient and that Patterson had both the motive and the means to create a hoax. But supporters of the film's authenticity argued that these criticisms missed crucial details that would have been nearly impossible to fake. They emphasized that the creature's gait showed a mid-tarsal break, a foot flexibility characteristic found in some primate species but not in humans. They also noted that the film's speed calculations suggested the creature was much taller and had a longer stride than would be possible for a human in a costume. The scientific debate over the Patterson Gimlin film essentially split the research community into two camps that exist to this day. Believers, often called cryptozoologists, view the film as compelling evidence for an undiscovered species and continue to analyze it using increasingly sophisticated techniques. Skeptics see it as an elaborate hoax that has been perpetuated by wishful thinking and insufficient critical analysis. What both sides generally agree on is that the Patterson Gimlin film transformed Bigfoot from a regional folklore into a global phenomenon. The footage was broadcast on television news programs worldwide, featured in documentaries and magazines, and became a defining image of American cryptozoology. It also established a template for Bigfoot encounters that would influence reports for decades to come. The success and controversy of the Patterson Gimlin film led to an explosion of Bigfoot research activity throughout the 1970s and 1980s.
Scientists, amateur investigators, and publicity seekers flocked to the Pacific Northwest, hoping to capture their own evidence of the mysterious creatures. Organizations like the Bigfoot Field Researchers Organization were founded to coordinate search efforts and maintain databases of sighting reports. This period saw the emergence of several prominent Bigfoot researchers who would dedicate their careers to studying the phenomenon. Dr. Grover Krantz became the most visible scientific advocate for Bigfoot's existence, using his position as a university anthropology professor to lend academic credibility to the field. Krantz analyzed hundreds of footprint casts, developed theories about Bigfoot's possible evolutionary origins, and argued that the creatures represented a surviving population of an extinct primate called Gigantopithecus. René de Hinden, a Swiss-born Canadian researcher, spent over 40 years investigating Bigfoot reports across North America. De Hinden was known for his meticulous documentation of evidence and his willingness to challenge claims that he believed were fabricated or exaggerated. His work helped establish standards for evaluating Bigfoot evidence and separating potentially authentic reports from obvious hoaxes. However, the 1970s and 1980s also saw an increase in obviously fabricated Bigfoot evidence, much of which was created to capitalize on the public's fascination with the mystery. Fake footprints, blurry photographs, and staged encounter stories became commonplace, making it increasingly difficult for serious researchers to separate potentially authentic reports from deliberate deceptions. The most damaging revelation came in 2002, shortly after Ray Wallace's death, when members of his family announced that he had created the original Bigfoot tracks discovered at Bluff Creek in 1958. They revealed that Wallace had carved a pair of large wooden feet and used them to make the prints that started the modern Bigfoot phenomenon. The family's admission called into question not only the Bluff Creek incidents, but also the credibility of subsequent Bigfoot research that had built upon those foundational reports. The Wallace family's revelations created a crisis within the Bigfoot research community. Some investigators argued that even if Wallace had faked the original tracks, the thousands of subsequent reports from credible witnesses couldn't all be dismissed. Others concluded that the entire modern Bigfoot phenomenon was built on fabricated evidence and that continued research was pointless.
Despite the controversy over the Wallace tracks, new types of Bigfoot evidence continued to emerge. Audio recordings of alleged Bigfoot vocalizations, known as calls or howls, became increasingly common. These recordings typically featured deep, powerful sounds, unlike known wildlife vocalizations, often described as part human scream, part animal roar, and completely unlike anything in the documented acoustic repertoire of North American fauna. The most famous of these audio recordings were made by Ron Moorhead and Al Berry in the Sierra Nevada mountains of California during the 1970s. Their recordings, known as the Sierra Sounds, captured what appeared to be complex vocalizations and even primitive language-like communication. Acoustic analysis suggested that the sounds were produced by a vocal tract larger than that of any known primate, and linguistic analysis identified patterns that resembled rudimentary language structure. Hair samples attributed to Bigfoot also became a significant focus of research, particularly as DNA analysis technology became more sophisticated and accessible. Numerous samples of unusual hair found at alleged Bigfoot encounter sites were submitted to laboratories for genetic testing. Most samples were identified as coming from known animals, often bears,
but a small percentage yielded results that couldn't be matched to any species in genetic databases. The most intriguing of these genetic studies was conducted by Dr. Melba Ketchum, a veterinarian and genetics researcher who claimed to have analyzed over 100 samples of alleged Bigfoot DNA. Her research, published in 2013, concluded that the samples came from an unknown hominin that was a hybrid between modern humans and an unidentified primate. However, her study was heavily criticized by mainstream geneticists who argued that her methodology was flawed and her conclusions were not supported by the data. Track evidence also became more sophisticated during this period, with researchers using advanced casting techniques and detailed morphological analysis to study footprint discoveries. Dr. Jeffrey Meldrum, a professor of anatomy and anthropology at Idaho State University, emerged as one of the most prominent scientific voices in Bigfoot track analysis. Meldrum's research focused on the biomechanics of the footprints, analyzing features like pressure patterns, toe positioning, and mid-tarsal flexibility that he argued were consistent with a large bipedal primate but inconsistent with human locomotion. His work identified what he termed diagnostic features that would be difficult to fake and that appeared across multiple track discoveries in different geographical locations. However, skeptical researchers pointed out that even the most sophisticated tracks could be created by skilled hoaxers using detailed knowledge of primate anatomy and biomechanics. They argued that the consistency of features across different discoveries could indicate a shared hoaxing technique rather than evidence of a real creature.
The advent of trail cameras and other remote monitoring equipment in the 1990s and 2000s created new opportunities for capturing Bigfoot evidence. Researchers began deploying networks of motion-activated cameras in areas with high levels of reported activity, hoping to photograph the creatures without human presence that might cause them to flee. Despite thousands of trail cameras being deployed across North America, clear photographic evidence of Bigfoot has remained elusive. While numerous unusual images have been captured, including dark figures moving through forests and heat signatures suggesting large bipedal animals, none have provided the definitive proof that researchers had hoped to obtain. This lack of clear photographic evidence, despite widespread camera deployment, has become one of the strongest arguments used by skeptics to question Bigfoot's existence. They argue that if large, active populations of 8-foot-tall primates were living in North American forests, trail cameras would inevitably capture clear images of them. Bigfoot proponents, however, point to the intelligence and apparent camera avoidance behavior displayed by the creatures as an explanation for the lack of clear photographs. They argue that Bigfoot may be sophisticated enough to recognize and avoid human technology, making photographic documentation extremely difficult, even with modern equipment. The cultural impact of Bigfoot during the late 20th century extended far beyond scientific research and evidence analysis. The creature became a powerful symbol in American popular culture, appearing in countless movies, television shows, books, and commercial advertisements. Bigfoot evolved from a cryptozoological mystery into a cultural icon that represented wilderness, mystery, and the unknown aspects of the natural world. The town of Willow Creek, California, near the site of the Patterson Gimlin film, embraced its connection to Bigfoot by declaring itself the gateway to Bigfoot country. The community hosts an annual Bigfoot festival, maintains a Bigfoot museum, and has built its tourism economy around the creature's legend. Similar Bigfoot-themed attractions appeared in communities throughout the Pacific Northwest,
creating an entire tourism industry based on the mystery. This commercialization of Bigfoot created both opportunities and problems for serious researchers. While increased public interest provided funding and support for research expeditions, it also attracted individuals more interested in publicity and profit than in genuine scientific investigation. The line between legitimate research and entertainment became increasingly blurred, making it difficult for the public to distinguish between credible evidence and marketing-driven sensationalism.
The television industry particularly embraced Bigfoot content, producing numerous documentaries, reality shows, and fictional programs featuring the creature. Shows like Finding Bigfoot on Animal Planet brought Bigfoot research to mainstream television audiences, but often emphasized dramatic encounters and sensational claims over rigorous scientific methodology. These television productions had a significant impact on public perception of Bigfoot research, often portraying investigators as either heroic adventurers seeking to solve one of nature's greatest mysteries, or as deluded enthusiasts chasing fantasies in the woods. The reality of Bigfoot research, which typically involves careful analysis of trace evidence and tedious fieldwork with few dramatic moments, proved less suitable for television formats that demanded excitement and clear resolutions. The internet age brought new dimensions to Bigfoot research and community building. Online forums, websites, and social media platforms allowed researchers and enthusiasts from around the world to share information, coordinate expeditions, and debate evidence in real time. This connectivity led to more sophisticated analysis of existing evidence and faster dissemination of new reports. However, the internet also accelerated the spread of hoaxes and misinformation. Digital manipulation tools made it easier to create fake photographs and videos, while anonymous posting allowed individuals to fabricate encounter stories without accountability. The democratization of information sharing meant that fraudulent evidence could reach global audiences as quickly as potentially legitimate discoveries. One of the most significant developments in modern Bigfoot research has been the application of advanced scientific techniques to analyze existing Bigfoot evidence. DNA sequencing, spectrographic audio analysis, biomechanical modeling, and photogrammetric measurement have all been employed to examine Bigfoot evidence with unprecedented precision. These technological advances have produced mixed results. While some analyses have supported the authenticity of certain pieces of evidence, others have revealed previously undetected signs of fabrication. The overall effect has been to raise the standards for what constitutes compelling Bigfoot evidence, while making it more difficult for hoaxers to create convincing fakes. The most ambitious modern scientific approach to Bigfoot research has been the Olympic Project, a multidisciplinary research effort that combines wildlife biology, primatology, anthropology, and advanced field techniques to search for evidence of unknown primates in the Pacific Northwest. The project uses trail cameras, audio recording equipment, environmental DNA sampling, and systematic habitat surveys to look for signs of Bigfoot presence. Environmental DNA, or eDNA, represents one of the most promising new approaches to cryptozoological research. This technique involves collecting water and soil samples from areas where creatures are believed to be present and analyzing them for trace amounts of genetic material shed through hair, skin cells, and waste products. eDNA has been successfully used to detect rare and elusive wildlife species, making it potentially valuable for Bigfoot research.
However, eDNA studies in areas with reported Bigfoot activity have so far failed to detect genetic material from unknown primate species. While this doesn't definitively disprove Bigfoot's existence, it suggests that if the creatures are present, they exist in very small numbers or are extremely effective at avoiding areas where humans might collect samples. The question of whether Bigfoot could actually exist from a biological and ecological perspective has been extensively debated by scientists. Proponents argue that North American forests could support populations of large omnivorous primates, pointing to the ecological success of black bears as evidence that similar-sized creatures could survive in the same habitats. They note that new primate species are still being discovered in remote areas around the world, with over 20 new species identified in the past 2 decades. They argue that if unknown primates can remain hidden in well-studied regions like Southeast Asia and South America, it's plausible that they could exist in the vast wilderness areas of North America. Skeptical biologists, however, point to several factors that make Bigfoot's existence unlikely. They argue that viable populations of large mammals require substantial numbers of individuals to maintain genetic diversity and avoid inbreeding. The minimum viable population for a species like Bigfoot would likely be several thousand individuals, making complete concealment from modern detection methods extremely difficult. They also note that large primates require significant amounts of food and would inevitably leave extensive traces of their presence through feeding sign, nesting sites, and waste products. The lack of such evidence in areas with multiple Bigfoot reports suggests either the creatures don't exist or that they exist in numbers too small to maintain viable populations. The fossil record provides another challenge for Bigfoot's existence. While North America was home to various primate species millions of years ago, there's no fossil evidence for large primates surviving into recent times. The complete absence of Bigfoot fossils or skeletal remains is difficult to explain if the creatures have been present for the thousands of years suggested by indigenous traditions. Proponents respond that fossil preservation is rare and that creatures living in forest environments are particularly unlikely to fossilize due to the acidic soils and rapid decomposition that characterize these habitats. They argue that the absence of fossils doesn't prove the absence of the creatures themselves.
The misidentification hypothesis proposes that most Bigfoot sightings result from encounters with known animals viewed under poor conditions or from unusual angles. Black bears, which can walk upright for short distances, are frequently cited as the source of Bigfoot reports, especially when observed briefly at a distance or in poor lighting conditions. However, this explanation faces challenges when applied to reports from experienced outdoorsmen and wildlife professionals who are familiar with bear behavior and appearance. Many of the most credible Bigfoot witnesses are individuals who have spent their careers in wilderness environments and claim to be certain that what they observed was not a bear or other known animal. The pareidolia phenomenon, which involves the tendency to interpret ambiguous sensory input as familiar patterns, may also contribute to Bigfoot reports. The human brain is highly evolved to recognize patterns and potential threats, particularly in natural environments where predators might be present. This heightened pattern recognition could lead people to interpret shadows, tree formations, or distant objects as bipedal creatures. Social contagion effects may also influence the reporting and interpretation of unusual experiences. When Bigfoot sightings become part of local folklore or receive media attention, people in those areas may be more likely to interpret ambiguous experiences as Bigfoot encounters. The expectation of finding evidence can influence both what people notice and how they interpret what they observe. The role of media and popular culture in shaping Bigfoot reports cannot be underestimated. The widespread familiarity with Bigfoot imagery from movies,
television, and other media sources means that people have pre-existing mental models of what these creatures should look like and how they should behave. This cultural template may influence both the reporting and the interpretation of unusual experiences. Despite these psychological and sociological explanations, the core mystery of the Bigfoot phenomenon remains. Why do credible witnesses continue to report encounters with large, bipedal, hair-covered creatures in wilderness areas across North America? While misidentification and psychological factors undoubtedly account for some reports, the persistence and consistency of these accounts across different regions, time periods, and cultural backgrounds suggests that something is generating these experiences. The indigenous perspective on Bigfoot provides a different framework for understanding the phenomenon that doesn't rely solely on either biological existence or psychological explanation. Many Native American traditions treat these beings as part of the spiritual dimension of the natural world, entities that exist in the liminal space between the physical and supernatural realms.
From this perspective, the question of whether Bigfoot is real in a purely material sense misses the point. These beings serve important functions in human relationships with wilderness and the unknown, regardless of their physical existence. They remind people of the limits of human knowledge and the importance of maintaining respect for the mystery and power of the natural world. This indigenous viewpoint offers a middle path between the rigid positions of believers and skeptics, suggesting that the Bigfoot phenomenon can be meaningful and valuable even if the creatures themselves remain unproven. It acknowledges that human experiences in nature can be profound and transformative without requiring physical evidence to validate their significance. The continuing evolution of Bigfoot research reflects broader changes in how humans approach the unknown and unexplained. The rise of citizen science and amateur investigation has democratized research, while also creating new challenges for maintaining scientific rigor. Social media and digital communication have accelerated the spread of both information and misinformation, making it more difficult to evaluate the credibility of claims and evidence. Recent developments in Bigfoot research have included more sophisticated statistical analyses of sighting reports, attempting to identify patterns that might reveal the underlying causes of the phenomenon. Some studies have found correlations between Bigfoot reports and factors like population density, media coverage, and local folklore traditions, suggesting that social and cultural factors play significant roles in determining where and when sightings are reported. Other research has focused on the consistency of physical descriptions across different reports, looking for evidence of either a shared encounter with real creatures or the influence of cultural templates on witness accounts. These studies have found both consistencies that suggest common experiences and variations that reflect different cultural interpretations of similar events. The development of more sophisticated hoaxing techniques has also influenced modern Bigfoot research. High-quality costumes, digital manipulation tools, and detailed knowledge of primate anatomy have made it possible to create convincing fake evidence that requires expert analysis to detect. This technological arms race between hoaxers and researchers has raised the bar for what constitutes compelling evidence, while making it more difficult for the general public to evaluate claims independently. The economic impact of Bigfoot has grown significantly in recent decades, with tourism, media production, and merchandise sales generating millions of dollars annually.
Communities throughout the Pacific Northwest have embraced their connections to Bigfoot legends, creating museums, festivals, and guided expeditions that attract visitors from around the world. This economic dimension has created both opportunities and challenges for serious research. While commercial interest provides funding and support for some investigations, it also creates incentives for sensationalism and the production of questionable evidence designed to attract media attention and tourist dollars.
The relationship between commercial exploitation and legitimate research has become increasingly complex, with some researchers depending on media appearances and book sales to fund their investigations, while others maintain strict separation between their scientific work and commercial activities. The global expansion of Bigfoot-like reports in recent decades has added new dimensions to the phenomenon. Similar creatures, often called wild men or forest giants, are reported from virtually every continent, including the Yeti of the Himalayas, the Yowie of Australia, and the Alma of Central Asia. This worldwide distribution of similar reports has led some researchers to propose that these phenomena represent either a global species of unknown primate or a universal aspect of human psychology and folklore. The cross-cultural consistency of these reports is striking, particularly given the independent development of similar traditions in isolated societies. The common features include bipedal locomotion, massive size, hair covering, human-like intelligence, and elusive behavior that makes the creatures difficult to study or document. However, skeptics argue that this global distribution actually argues against the existence of unknown primates, since it would require multiple species to have evolved independently in different regions while maintaining similar characteristics and behaviors. They suggest that the similarities reflect common human psychological tendencies rather than encounters with related species. The advent of DNA analysis has created new possibilities for resolving questions about unknown primates, but it has also revealed the complexity of genetic identification. Many samples submitted for Bigfoot DNA analysis have yielded results indicating unusual genetic combinations that don't match known species. But determining whether these represent unknown creatures, contaminated samples, or laboratory errors remains challenging. The most significant genetic studies have involved large-scale analysis of multiple samples from different locations, attempting to identify consistent patterns that might indicate the presence of an unknown species. While some studies have identified genetic sequences that don't match known animals, others have found evidence of contamination or degradation that makes the results difficult to interpret. The field of environmental DNA has offered new approaches to detecting the presence of unknown creatures without requiring direct physical evidence. By sampling water, soil, and air in areas where unknown creatures are reported, researchers can potentially identify genetic material shed through normal biological processes.
However, eDNA studies in areas with Bigfoot reports have generally failed to detect genetic evidence of unknown primates, though they have successfully identified numerous known species, including rare and elusive animals that are difficult to observe directly. This suggests that either Bigfoot doesn't exist in these areas or exists in such small numbers that genetic detection is unlikely.
The educational impact of Bigfoot phenomenon has been significant, introducing many people to concepts from anthropology, primatology, ecology, and scientific methodology. While the evidence for Bigfoot's existence remains controversial, the investigation of that evidence has taught countless individuals about topics ranging from primate evolution to DNA analysis. Science educators have used Bigfoot as a case study for teaching critical thinking skills, demonstrating how to evaluate evidence, identify logical fallacies, and distinguish between scientific and unscientific approaches to investigating claims about the natural world. The phenomenon has also highlighted the importance of indigenous knowledge and the value of traditional ecological understanding. The recognition that Native American traditions contain detailed information about forest environments and their inhabitants has led to increased respect for indigenous perspectives on natural history and ecology. The conservation implications of Bigfoot research have become increasingly apparent as investigations have focused attention on remote wilderness areas and their ecological importance. Whether or not Bigfoot exists, the search for the creature has generated support for protecting large, undisturbed forest habitats that serve as refuges for numerous known species. Many Bigfoot researchers have become passionate advocates for wilderness preservation, arguing that these areas need protection both as potential habitat for unknown primates and as reservoirs of biodiversity that support ecosystem health. The mystery of Bigfoot has provided a compelling narrative for conservation efforts that might otherwise struggle to capture public attention. The precautionary principle suggests that areas with repeated Bigfoot reports might warrant special conservation attention, since they often represent some of the most remote and ecologically intact forest ecosystems remaining in North America. Even if the reports don't indicate the presence of unknown primates, they identify areas that serve as important habitat for numerous other species. The international dimension of Bigfoot research has grown significantly with improved global communication and the recognition that similar phenomena occur worldwide. International conferences, collaborative research projects, and shared databases have created a global community of researchers investigating reports of unknown primates and human-like creatures. This global perspective has revealed both similarities and differences between Bigfoot-type reports from different regions, providing insights into the potential biological, psychological, and cultural factors that contribute to these phenomena. The variation in descriptions, behaviors, and cultural interpretations across different regions offers opportunities to test hypotheses about the underlying causes of the reports.
The development of standardized protocols for investigating and documenting alleged cryptozoological evidence has improved the quality and consistency of research across different teams and locations. These protocols emphasize rigorous documentation, chain of custody procedures, and systematic analysis techniques that allow for meaningful comparison of evidence from different sources. However, the amateur nature of much cryptozoological research means that these standards are not always followed consistently, and significant variation remains in the quality and reliability of investigations. The challenge of maintaining scientific rigor while accommodating the enthusiasm of amateur researchers continues to influence the development of the field. The legal and ethical dimensions of Bigfoot research have become more prominent as the field has grown and professionalized. Questions about property rights, permits for research activities, and the treatment of both human witnesses and potentially discovered creatures have required careful consideration. The possibility that unknown primate species might exist has raised questions about their legal status and protection under endangered species legislation. If Bigfoot or similar creatures were proven to exist, they would likely qualify for immediate protection under existing wildlife conservation laws, potentially affecting land use and development in their habitats. The ethical treatment of witnesses has also become an important consideration, as people who report Bigfoot encounters often face ridicule and skepticism that can have significant personal and professional consequences. Researchers have developed guidelines for protecting witness privacy and treating their accounts with respect, regardless of the ultimate interpretation of their experiences. The media representation of Bigfoot has evolved significantly over the decades, moving from sensationalistic tabloid coverage to more sophisticated documentary treatments that attempt to present multiple perspectives on the phenomenon. This evolution reflects broader changes in how media outlets approach controversial and unexplained topics. However, the entertainment value of Bigfoot continues to influence how the topic is presented, with many productions prioritizing dramatic narratives and sensational claims over careful analysis of evidence. This tension between entertainment and education remains a significant challenge for serious researchers seeking to communicate their findings to broader audiences. The role of hoaxes in the Bigfoot phenomenon cannot be understated, and understanding the motivations and methods of hoaxers has become an important part of modern research. Some hoaxes are created for financial gain, capitalizing on media interest and public fascination with the mystery. Others seem motivated by a desire for attention or the thrill of fooling experts and the public.
The most sophisticated hoaxes require significant planning, skill, and resources to create convincing fake evidence. The development of detailed costumes, the creation of realistic footprint casts, and the staging of encounter scenarios can involve considerable time and expense, suggesting that some hoaxers are driven by motivations beyond simple pranks or immediate financial reward. The psychological profile of hoaxers varies widely, from individuals seeking fame and recognition to those who claim to be protecting the creatures by creating false evidence that discourages serious research. Some hoaxers have expressed genuine belief in Bigfoot's existence and argue that their fake evidence serves the greater purpose of maintaining public interest until real proof can be obtained. The detection of hoaxes has become increasingly sophisticated, employing techniques from forensic science, materials analysis, and behavioral psychology. Researchers have developed expertise in identifying the telltale signs of manufactured evidence, from the wrong materials used in fake footprint casts to the unnatural movement patterns displayed in costume-based film footage. However, the arms race between hoaxers and researchers means that detection methods must constantly evolve to keep pace with improving fabrication techniques. The availability of professional quality costumes, digital manipulation software, and detailed knowledge of primate anatomy has made it possible to create hoaxes that require expert analysis to detect. The impact of hoaxes on legitimate research has been profound, creating an atmosphere of suspicion that affects the evaluation of all evidence. Researchers must now assume that any piece of evidence could be fabricated until proven otherwise, making the investigation process more complex and time-consuming. This heightened skepticism has had both positive and negative effects on the field. While it has improved the rigor of evidence evaluation and reduced the acceptance of obviously fake material, it has also made it more difficult for potentially authentic evidence to receive serious consideration from mainstream scientists. The few scientists who have openly supported the possibility of Bigfoot's existence have often faced professional criticism and career challenges. The academic culture's emphasis on peer review and consensus makes it difficult for researchers to pursue unconventional topics without risking their professional standing. Despite these challenges, some academic institutions have begun to recognize the educational value of cryptozoological topics as tools for teaching scientific methodology and critical thinking. The investigation of extraordinary claims provides excellent opportunities to demonstrate how science evaluates evidence and distinguishes between reliable and unreliable information. The technological frontier of Bigfoot research continues to expand with developments in artificial intelligence, machine learning, and automated analysis systems. Researchers are beginning to use AI-powered systems to analyze large databases of sighting reports, looking for patterns that might not be apparent to human investigators. Machine learning algorithms have been applied to the analysis of alleged Bigfoot vocalizations, footprint measurements, and photographic evidence, sometimes revealing subtle patterns or anomalies that escaped previous detection. These automated analysis tools offer the potential for more objective and comprehensive evaluation of evidence. However, the effectiveness of AI-based analysis depends heavily on the quality and completeness of the input data. Garbage in, garbage out remains a fundamental principle, and the mixed quality of much cryptozoological evidence limits the reliability of automated analysis results. The development of more sophisticated field detection equipment continues to create new opportunities for documenting unusual phenomena. Thermal imaging cameras, ultrasonic recording equipment, and environmental monitoring sensors provide researchers with tools that were unavailable to earlier generations of investigators. These technological advances have occasionally captured intriguing anomalies, including thermal signatures of large bipedal figures, ultrasonic vocalizations with unusual characteristics, and environmental disturbances that suggest the presence of large animals. However, none of these technological detections have provided the clear, unambiguous evidence that would definitively prove Bigfoot's existence. The challenge remains that even the most sophisticated equipment can only detect and record phenomena. It cannot automatically interpret what those phenomena represent. A thermal signature of a large bipedal figure could be a person, a bear walking upright, or an unknown creature. And distinguishing between these possibilities requires additional evidence and analysis.
The philosophical implications of the Bigfoot phenomenon extend beyond questions of the creature's physical existence to broader issues about the nature of knowledge, belief, and reality. The persistence of Bigfoot beliefs, despite the lack of definitive proof, raises questions about how humans evaluate evidence and make decisions in the face of uncertainty. The phenomenon illustrates the tension between scientific skepticism and openness to new possibilities. While healthy skepticism is essential for evaluating extraordinary claims, excessive skepticism can become a form of dogmatism that prevents serious consideration of unconventional evidence. The Bigfoot controversy has highlighted the limitations of purely materialist approaches to understanding human experience. The profound impact that Bigfoot encounters have on witnesses suggests that these experiences have meaning and value that transcend questions of physical proof. Some philosophers and anthropologists have argued that the emphasis on physical evidence misses the point of phenomena like Bigfoot, which may be better understood as expressions of human relationships with nature, mystery, and the unknown, rather than as biological discovery problems. The future of Bigfoot research will likely be shaped by several converging trends. Advancing technology will continue to provide new tools for detection and analysis, while improved understanding of human psychology and sociology will offer better frameworks for interpreting witness experiences. The growing recognition of indigenous knowledge and perspectives may lead to more sophisticated approaches that integrate traditional ecological understanding with modern scientific methods. This integration could provide new insights into both the phenomenon itself and the cultural contexts in which it occurs. Climate change and habitat destruction are altering the wilderness environments where Bigfoot reports are most common. These environmental changes may affect both the phenomenon itself, if it involves real creatures, and the human experiences that generate the reports. The continued expansion of human development into remote areas may reduce the number of truly wild spaces available for mysterious phenomena, potentially affecting the frequency and character of Bigfoot encounters. Alternatively, climate-driven changes in animal behavior and distribution could create new opportunities for unusual wildlife encounters that might be interpreted as Bigfoot sightings. The democratization of research tools and communication technology will likely continue to involve more amateur investigators in Bigfoot research, while also increasing the volume of evidence that needs evaluation. The challenge will be maintaining scientific rigor while accommodating broader participation in the research process. The development of citizen science protocols specifically designed for cryptozoological investigation could help standardize data collection and improve the quality of field research. These protocols would need to balance accessibility for amateur researchers with the methodological requirements for producing scientifically useful results.
The international expansion of Bigfoot-type research will likely reveal new insights into the global distribution of similar phenomena and the cultural factors that influence their interpretation. Comparative studies across different regions and cultures could help distinguish between universal and culturally specific aspects of these experiences. The potential for discovering new primate species in remote areas remains real, as demonstrated by recent discoveries in various parts of the world. While these discoveries have not included anything resembling the classic Bigfoot description, they demonstrate that significant gaps remain in our knowledge of primate diversity and distribution. The application of environmental DNA techniques to cryptozoological research is still in its early stages, and improvements in sampling methods and genetic analysis could eventually provide definitive answers about the presence or absence of unknown primates in specific areas. The development of more sophisticated statistical and analytical methods will continue to improve the evaluation of cryptozoological evidence. Advanced pattern recognition, multivariate analysis, and predictive modeling could help identify the factors that best explain the distribution and characteristics of Bigfoot reports. The integration of multiple lines of evidence through meta-analysis and systematic review techniques could provide more comprehensive assessments of the phenomenon than have been possible with individual studies. These approaches could help identify the strongest evidence while filtering out the weakest claims. As we approach the end of our journey through the complex world of Bigfoot, it becomes clear that this phenomenon represents far more than a simple question about an unknown animal. The story of Bigfoot is ultimately a story about humanity itself, our relationship with nature, our response to mystery, and our ways of understanding and interpreting the world around us. The decades of research, investigation, and debate surrounding Bigfoot have produced valuable insights into human psychology, the scientific process, the importance of indigenous knowledge, and the complex interactions between evidence, belief, and cultural context. Whether or not Bigfoot exists as a physical creature, the phenomenon has served as a powerful lens to examine fundamental questions about how we know what we know and how we respond to the unknown. The indigenous peoples of North America understood something that modern society sometimes forgets. The world is full of mystery, and mystery itself has value. The forests that are home to Bigfoot legends are also home to countless known species whose behaviors and ecological relationships remain incompletely understood. The sense of wonder and possibility that drives people to search for Bigfoot is the same quality that motivates scientific discovery and environmental conservation.
The scientific investigation of Bigfoot, regardless of its ultimate conclusions, has advanced our understanding of numerous fields, from primate biology to forensic analysis. The techniques developed for evaluating cryptozoological evidence have applications in mainstream scientific research, and the interdisciplinary nature of Bigfoot studies has fostered collaboration between researchers from different fields. The cultural impact of Bigfoot has been equally significant, inspiring countless individuals to develop interests in biology, anthropology, and scientific investigation. The creature has served as a gateway for many people into deeper engagement with natural history and wilderness conservation. Perhaps most importantly, Bigfoot represents our collective recognition that the world still holds secrets and that human knowledge, despite its impressive scope, remains incomplete. In an age when satellites can map the Earth's surface in extraordinary detail and genetic techniques can identify species from microscopic tissue samples, the possibility that something large and extraordinary might still be hiding in our forests represents a powerful symbol of hope for mystery and discovery. The Bigfoot phenomenon reminds us that the natural world is not yet fully known or completely controlled by human civilization. This reminder has value, regardless of whether the creature itself exists, serving as a counterweight to the hubris that sometimes accompanies technological advancement and scientific progress. The ongoing search for Bigfoot also highlights the importance of keeping an open mind while maintaining critical thinking skills. The history of science includes numerous examples of phenomena that were initially dismissed as impossible or ridiculous, but later proved to be real. The scientific method depends on balancing skepticism with openness to new evidence and ideas. The ethical dimensions of Bigfoot research have implications that extend beyond cryptozoology to broader questions about how we investigate extraordinary claims and treat people whose experiences don't conform to conventional expectations. The respect and dignity accorded to Bigfoot witnesses reflects our values about human experience and the importance of taking people's accounts seriously, even when they challenge our existing understanding. The ongoing search for Bigfoot also highlights the importance of keeping an open mind while maintaining critical thinking skills. The history of science includes numerous examples of phenomena that were initially dismissed as impossible or ridiculous, but later proved to be real. The scientific method depends on balancing skepticism with openness to new evidence and ideas.
The environmental legacy of Bigfoot may prove to be among its most important contributions. The creature has become a powerful symbol for wilderness preservation and has drawn attention to remote forest ecosystems that might otherwise be overlooked in conservation efforts. The idea that these areas might harbor unknown species provides a compelling argument for protecting them from development and degradation.
The economic impact of Bigfoot, while sometimes criticized as commercialization of mystery, has also provided sustainable economic alternatives for rural communities that might otherwise depend on resource extraction industries. Bigfoot tourism represents a form of economic development that depends on preserving rather than destroying natural habitats. The global expansion of Bigfoot-type phenomena has created opportunities for international collaboration and cultural exchange around shared interests in mystery and the unknown. The recognition that similar traditions exist in cultures around the world has fostered greater appreciation for the common elements of human experience across different societies. The educational value of Bigfoot extends from elementary school students learning about scientific methodology to graduate researchers developing new techniques for evidence analysis. The phenomenon has served as a teaching tool for demonstrating how science works, how evidence is evaluated, and how extraordinary claims are investigated. The therapeutic aspects of Bigfoot encounters, whether they involve real creatures or misidentified animals, highlight the psychological benefits of mystery and wonder in human life. The sense of awe and humility that often accompany these experiences may contribute to mental health and spiritual well-being in ways that deserve further study. As we look toward the future, the Bigfoot phenomenon will likely continue to evolve in response to technological advancement, environmental change, and cultural shifts. New generations of researchers will bring fresh perspectives and novel approaches to investigating the mystery, while new technologies will provide unprecedented opportunities for detection and analysis. The resolution of the Bigfoot mystery, if it ever comes, may take forms that current researchers haven't anticipated. The discovery of a new primate species, the identification of psychological or sociological factors that fully explain the reports, or the development of new theoretical frameworks that transcend the traditional existence versus non-existence debate, could all contribute to our understanding of the Bigfoot mystery.
The search for Bigfoot ultimately reflects the human desire to explore, to question, and to remain open to the possibility that the world still holds surprises. This desire has driven scientific advancement throughout history and continues to motivate researchers, adventurers, and curious individuals around the world. In the end, Bigfoot may be less important as a creature than as an idea. The idea that mystery persists, that the natural world retains the power to surprise and humble us, and that the unknown continues to call to the human spirit. This idea has value that transcends questions of physical evidence and biological existence. The forests of North America will continue to inspire wonder and speculation, regardless of whether they harbor unknown primates. The mystery of Bigfoot has taught us to look more carefully at these environments, to appreciate their complexity and beauty, and to recognize our responsibility to protect them for future generations. As researchers continue to investigate Bigfoot reports and analyze evidence, they carry forward a tradition of inquiry that connects them to indigenous peoples who first told stories of forest giants, to early settlers who encountered the unknown in the wilderness, and to all the individuals who have contributed to our understanding of this fascinating phenomenon. The legacy of Bigfoot research extends beyond any individual discovery or conclusion to encompass the broader human enterprise of seeking knowledge, questioning assumptions, and remaining open to wonder in an increasingly known and mapped world. This legacy ensures that regardless of what future investigations reveal, the search for Bigfoot will continue to contribute to human understanding and appreciation of the natural world and our place within it.
The true story behind North America's most famous monster is not just about a creature that may or may not exist, but about the human qualities that make us seek out mystery, question conventional wisdom, and maintain hope that the world still holds wonders yet to be discovered. In preserving and investigating the Bigfoot phenomenon, we preserve something essential about the human spirit and our relationship with the unknown. And so the search continues, carried forward by new generations of researchers, enthusiasts, and dreamers who understand that some questions are worth pursuing, regardless of whether they lead to definitive answers. In forests across North America and around the world, people continue to report encounters with beings that challenge our understanding of what is possible, ensuring that the mystery of Bigfoot will endure as long as there are wild places to explore and human minds willing to contemplate the unknown. The story of Bigfoot reminds us that in our rush to catalog and control the natural world, we must not lose our capacity for wonder, our respect for mystery, and our recognition that the universe still holds secrets waiting to be discovered. Whether Bigfoot exists or not, the phenomenon serves as a guardian of these essential human qualities, ensuring that future generations will inherit not just knowledge, but also the curiosity and sense of possibility that make knowledge worth pursuing. This is the true legacy of Bigfoot, not proof of a creature's existence, but proof of humanity's enduring fascination with the unknown and our willingness to venture into the wilderness, both literal and metaphorical, in search of answers to questions that may be more important than any conclusions we might reach. In the end, perhaps that is enough. Perhaps that is everything.